Hello students, let's continue with the next problem. So the question says, Valeria factored the expression shown below. 6 parentheses x squared plus x minus 1, close parentheses plus 2 parentheses x plus 4. And they're asking you which of the steps did she make a mistake on. So basically they want to know whether you think she did the problem correct or not, right? So we're talking about factoring. There's an expression, right? And I want to know if she did a mistake or not. Okay, very good. So let's start. First thing I want to do is, of course, we need to rewrite my expression, right? So I'm going to start with 6 parentheses x squared plus x minus 1 plus 2 parentheses x plus 4. So the first thing we need to do is, of course, we need to do distributive property, right guys? If you remember, it means I'm going to multiply 6 by everything inside the parentheses. So I'm going to multiply 6 times x, and I'm going to get what? 6x squared. Very good. Then I'm going to multiply 6 times that x on the middle, and I do get just 6x. Then I'm going to multiply 6 times my minus 1 or negative 1, and I do get a minus 6. That will take care of the first parenthesis. Second parenthesis, I need to multiply 2 times x, so I get 2x, and I also need to multiply 2 times 4, and that gives me an 8. So if I look at the first step, that looks exactly like mine, right? So step 1 is correct. So let's put here that is correct. Okay, what's the next thing to do? Well, now I will need to identify any combining like terms, right? Do I have any terms that I can combine? So if you notice, I do have a 6x and a 2x. So those two can be combined. And if you look at step 2, that's exactly what they're doing in step 2. They're combining them. That's what they have them in parentheses. So step 2, it's also correct. Let's go to step 3. So step 3 seems to me that they are combining the terms already, right? So let me write down the one that I didn't do anything, 6x squared. 6 plus a 2 gives me 8x. And minus 6 and a plus 8 gives me a plus 2, which is what I see on step 3. So far, all my steps have been correct. Is that right? So now, the next step, step 4, if you notice, it's my factors, right? So I need to factor my trinomial. But before I do that, I want you to remember and ask yourself if there's anything that they can have as a common factor. Because if they have a common factor, it might make things a lot easier for us to do. So I believe that all of them share the 2. So 2 times 3 gives me a 6. 2 times 4 gives me the 8. And 2 times 1 gives me the 2. So now that's the one that I'm going to use for my x and my table, right? I'm going to write down the standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, just to help me identify a, b, and c. Okay, so let's move on. I need to know who's a, b, and c. So the 2 outside the parentheses, I'm not going to use it, okay? Just what's inside the parentheses. So a is 3, very good. B is 4, very good. And C is positive 1, right? Okay, so what I want to do next is I want to write down the numbers next over here. So A is 3, B is 4, and C is positive 1. Okay, so let's do some highlighting over here just to help us identify that. Very good. So the next step that I'm going to do is I need to do the X and the table. So let me give you a couple of seconds for you guys to take care of that. Just remember that the whole idea of finding a common factor for my trinomial is to make things a little bit easier for us. But if you don't do that step, you should still get the same answer. So we're going to start with my product of A times C, which is A3. The B is A4. And on the bottom sections goes the A, which in this case is A3. So far so good? Okay, let's move on to the table. So in the table, I need to find the product, remember? Talking about product and sum. So I need to find the product of what number? 3, very good. And I also need to find the sum of 4. So we don't worry about the sum yet. We do the product all the time first, right? So let's start. Since I want a positive number, then I start with a 1 times 3. And yes, I do get a 3. But you gotta remember that also negative 1 times negative 3 also gives you a positive 3, right? Can I find another factors for 3? No, right? That's it? I'm done. What about the sum now? Let's see. 1 plus 3 gives me a 4. Yes, bingo, right? Did somebody say that? That's my numbers, right? I do 1, a 3, and a 4. So those are my numbers. But I'm going to continue the next, since it's not a lot, just to show you that that's actually my answer. This will be a negative 4. Okay? So my two factors are going to be right here. So my factors are 1 and 3. Let's go back to the X. I'm going to write down a 1 and a 3. And the next thing will be for you to decide if there's anything you can simplify. I do see a 3 and a 3 right here. So I know I need to simplify that by dividing by 3. And 3 divided by 3 gives me a 1. 3 divided by 3 gives me a 1. And I do need to remind you guys that my x goes with a coefficient a, right? So let's go ahead and highlight my new factors. These are the ones that I'm going to use as my answers, right? I am not going to use the 3 over 3 because I simplify my answers, right? Okay, let's write down my factors then. So my first factor is going to be 3x plus 1. Second factor is going to be 1x plus 1. I can rewrite it as 3x plus 1. And this one I can write it without a coefficient of 1. So I will say x plus 1. Now look at step 4. Do you see any of that? Well, I know what you're thinking. Miss, I don't see the first part. It doesn't seem familiar. But the next one, I want you guys to look at this. There's a 3x plus 1. I do see a 3x plus 1. I also see a, what else? X plus 1 by itself, which is right here. And where is that 2 coming from? Well, that 2 is coming from your coefficient. Remember the one that we pull out, which was my common factor? So I can write down that number here, right? And that number will complete my problem now, which I see it right there. Agree on that? So step 4 is correct. The first part of step 4 is if you guys did not pull out the 2 in the front, then that would be more than likely the answer for you guys. Okay? So my answer is what? All the steps are correct.